what does it do? Uh, so I was also looking at how objects play the role of kind of displacing themselves. Um, to just give a background of what how the work was produced was also it was a part of the triennial that happened in Japan, and I was looking at the idea of modernization, and for me it was interesting because modernism is almost it was like it's like the Big Bang Theory. You know, it's still happening, but we are unaware about it. So I was looking at those situations and how I could use those situations to translate it in the objects that I was working on. So a lot of it are, I mean, if you go back to the work, a lot of these are domestic objects that kind of at a given point become useless when they start talking about themselves, and still they have the identity of what they are.
Thanks, Shreyas. Shilpa, just briefly, would you like to talk about this question of domesticity, which is sort of very strongly there in the exhibition, but your work has also dealt with this question quite closely at different occasions. So just briefly, if you would like to talk about this, dealing with the question of domesticity.
Yeah. Okay, no. Well, in various ways, I mean, sort of in various tangents, I mean, one can think of a work, the menstrual blood work, 2001, where when cloth pieces were given to women to stain with their menstrual blood and a work was made out of it. Or this kind, other work downstairs which uses an element from everyday life, or some soaps that people can take away onto which threat is inscribed, or just last week some 3,000 balloons were given elsewhere. So where I sort of I'm interested in this idea of what sort of the space between how an object sort of gets defined as a work of art, and that possibility, and the fact that sometimes it may appear something else may allow a certain kind of the space between the person in front of the object and elsewhere sort of can collapse momentarily a little bit. And then the possibility, you know, like this soap, this bathing soap, it started in 2008, and even till today, I'm surprised at different places I land up and I see this soap either in a bathroom or a bookshelf or in somebody's home as a work of, you know, somebody's actually taken not one but like 5 and made a stack. And another work where just about a year ago at Kemol, where gravestones people took away from a gallery, and there were those who took the work. There were also those who returned the work. The work was very minimal in what was inscribed onto it, and so the story often stays with the person who took it. So one is sort of interested in the object, and the fact that when an object sort of moves into various spaces, it gathers various knowledges, and it sort of can lose out on certain, the many subjectivities that anything around us would have. And so that's why I'm sort of interested in the object itself. And often the object is very immediate and around you, whether it's a bag or a soap or a mirror, you know, or something that you wear. One's interest, or the act itself is very immediate. So that sort of becomes a way of entering into a space. Yeah.
No, thanks, Shilpa, because I really wanted to draw on this from what Shreyas was talking about, objects, their sort of sense of where they are produced as design objects, and they're sort of filling up many other locations or locating themselves, to the question of domesticity, which is physical in many ways, but it also sort of exists in many actions, some of them, and I'm happy you brought out the the menstrual work, menstrual blood work that you spoke about. Because actually in the exhibition downstairs, that's what happens to me, that when I'm looking at all the works, and even if all the works split into their collection of objects, including like files stacked in a shelf, it just brings about these sort of scattered sensibilities that objects carry, and this sort of stress that we have all the time as to what objects define domesticity but may not act as domestic at all points in time, and what other ways in which domesticity exists. So it's just one thing that an exhibition like this can also throw up. I want to get into ask. Okay.
Yeah, I can. Maybe I just can add something, because today we talk very freely about this and very easily, but we should remember why we see objects daily objects as an art object. And this is this also has to do with two different things. On the one hand, it goes back very late in art history to to feel and to display the nature, to paint the nature, to portrait the nature as reality, yeah, in a trompe-l'œil, for example. But nowadays, the 20th century and the 21st century can only deal with objects, daily objects, and art objects because of the ready-made of Marcel Duchamp. Mm-hmm. When he made the fontaine, when he subscribed his name, Richard Mudd, R. Mudd, not even his own name, Marcel Duchamp, when he wrote Richard Mudd on La Fontaine, on this Ulma, he was, and this was at the turn of the century, this was also the beginning of modernism, he is like the most important figure, I think, and his whole oeuvre takes place till today in different forms. So you have, in a way, to ask yourself, what did Marcel Duchamp do? He played with words, he played with reality and simulation, he played with his own figure, representing himself as a woman. Yeah, there are all these pictures of him where he dressed up in fancy clothes like a lady. So in a way, in this artist figure, there are all these different aspects which are also in our show, which reacts, of course, on the 80s and which reacts on the 60s and 70s especially. But it all grows back from this moment of time when Marcel Duchamp invented or reinvented himself in different personalities, in different sayings, and at the end, to the most extreme, when he stopped making art. And from this point on, artists were always wanted to have the approach, and this was especially in the 60s and 70s, that art goes into life and life is seeing back into art. And nowadays, we have talked a long while now of the 90s, but we're still alive and we have 2016 now. We're going in the 21st century. We should probably now say that what Marcel Duchamp tried to establish, which was revolutionary. I mean, his work was taken out of the Armory show, as we all know, and it took years to transcribe also his text and his interviews and to understand actually what he was doing, and also these kind of crazy objects, yeah, he was doing. And it took now, I think, till today, so that we have now the situation, and this is why it's so interesting to look at art now, or to look at the situation now, what's going on, that the borders have blurred totally, yeah? So we have the art of living, we have the art of cooking, we have the art of gardening, the art of spas and resource, and we have all these parallel worlds and living, and so, and I think now is the question, all the artists were constantly working on it, that art goes into life, that art comes to the public, that art touches thinking, make money, or yeah. And now we have this globalized art world, and I think, I don't know, I don't want to judge it in a moralistic way. Is it good or bad? You know, we should overcome these kind of point of view. But now we have to ask ourselves, what do we find in art? Why we do exhibitions? Why we do, this is very also the questions to artists. How do you become an artist? How do you define yourself as an artist? What do you do as a museum director? What do I show in my museum? What do people expect when they come to me? What do people expect when they come and see the show? Yeah. So I think now it's a big challenge, and it's even more important that institutions like the Goethe Institute or the IFA Institute try to continue this discussion, because it's all blurring away, and you really can't define. If you see a window shop of a window shop display of Prada, or you know, they have so much money, they can create so interesting displays and things. You know, what, for example, Tobias Rehberger's work is on, what you see in this exhibition. Is this a display, an object? Is it a work of art? This was his thinking from the background that there are these different fields. But now, what are artists doing now? You know, how do they deal with the situation? How to establish art, and what do we are longing for and looking for, what our unconsciousness really wants, yeah? I think this is now a challenge, and maybe we can just also to maybe include the people here for questions or comments or this, or we ourselves give a comment on this.
I think it's good that you brought it up, because I wanted to close with this question to you also, because we have you, and you said your co-curator was a product designer. And this is a kind of a personal peeve, that some years ago, everybody started calling themselves an artist. So what do you do? And everybody was an artist somehow. So I was just at a conference of architects, and anything that is not a building or a chair, they start calling it's a work of art. So this question of what becomes a work of art, and today it's fancy for everybody to call themselves a designer. Now that's become the fancy word. So everybody is a designer. No training, but why do you need training? That's also a question. But I think it's an important question, that what does training do, whether it is a training of an artist, whether it's a training of an architect or a designer. With architecture, we always say that we have a stamp that comes from the government, like doctors get. So in that sense, the moment we get a stamp, we are officially architects. But when do you become an artist or a designer? And does everybody who does something up and down become a designer? Does every object become an object of design? Or when does an object of design become an object of art? These are extremely important questions, and this blurring has also been taken in the abused directions very much. So you see this flourish of design, which is not really design, but it's just fancy objects floating in the market. So I think these are important, extremely important questions, and which is why we are hoping that with the Goethe Institute, as part of the public programming that we are doing with this exhibition, is to ask the question of design histories in India, and hopefully a series of lectures that look into this aspect of design histories. But since your co-curator was a product designer, what were the conversations like on the question of art and design that you had while selecting the objects or conceptualizing the coming together of different artworks in the show? So briefly, if you could give us a sense of that, and then we could open it up for audience questions.
Yeah, I don't want to go again back in the history now, because product design has changed as well. I think everything which has a commission, and this is normally what designers have to do when they design cars, when they design furniture, when they design new houses, shoes, clothing. It has a kind of commissioning. And this is probably till today like this. But as we just saw today here in Mumbai, in your nice shop where we went, it's also kind of startup today. You don't have to have a commission to design or to build a house. You can just do it. You find people who give you the money, who trust you, or you find like traditional forms or traditional materials, but you find your new way. So I think this is also now very open. And it's very good that we have all these possibilities and we can distribute all these possibilities. And I think because it has all blurred, and because you can buy at any time on this earth, if it's 2 hours in the night or 8 hours in the morning, you can buy at the same time the same project from all over the world. Because of this flood of information and pictures and everything and objecthood, and you have to distinguish. And we have to even more sharpen our look and sharpen our senses. And I think also this is what's happening at the moment. And I think also this is a need also for the people to go deeper into these things. And I think this is a new chance, in a way, to find also new ways back to traditional forms, you know, but you see them differently and you distinguish them differently. For example, maybe you can tell us about your shop because I think it's so interesting, these different kind of woods you're using. The forms are so simple, you know, we discussed it also. But it's a new invention, how you put it together. So maybe you can just get a microphone or come here or so and tell us. Would be interesting.
Sure, there's a traveling.
Yeah.
So basically, she's talking about the store that I work for. It's called Various at Dubai. It's based in Marine Lines. So the store represents a very minimalistic approach towards furniture. Our designers, Sachin and Melissa, they call it under-designed. So in the influx of so much over-designed products in the market, what happened is Sachin and Melissa were working for a commissioning project for Chirag, who is the patron for the store. And he bought the space along with his residential house. And the carpenters who were working in the project, they approached the designers and said, we don't get enough work with solid wood nowadays. People are so money-minded. It comes down to plywood, and it's not interesting to work on the plywood. You can't shape plywood the way you want. You can do with solid teak wood. So Chirag had a place in mind, and he opened the store. What you see there is very traditional craftsmanship of carpenters who have given shape of very, very neat looking designs, which while looking at it you would imagine it's very simple, and it is very simple, but it can also work as a function of it's what I call it as a kind of an amalgamation of functionality and art, which becomes furniture for me. Also in February we commissioned for El Decor. It had a design fair in Delhi. There's a 6x8 installation of babool tree trunk, teak wood, and brass reeds. 241 brass reeds were planted in the 6x8 teak wood bench, and it became a furniture art installation, one of its kind, which we have not done before. And based on that, we got another project, which is a table cum bench, which is also wood and brass, amalgamation. So, as you said, the art can kind of take place without commissioning as well. But it's really great how the interpretation of furniture and art can become one, and we can give so many options because teak wood is expensive. We can give so many options and make it available for people to come and experience and buy it that way. Thank you.
Saying, and what is also important for art is at the end the material and the technique. And this is, you just said there's so many, but you said, everybody calls himself an artist, but at the end you have also to either to have the feeling, but you have also, as a painter especially, or when you draw, but also when you do objects, you have to have a feeling, and you have also to be able to find your own technique. And this is not something everybody can do.
You need time.
Yeah, and the time.
You need time, and I didn't, when I talk about the 90s, I did these paintings and I was never thinking about how my paintings can develop. I thought this is a kind of fixed point. But painting can develop, and it's a work you can do your whole life. It sounds very old-fashioned, but it's really interesting also for yourself what's happening if you go on, and go on. And if I have young painters now, in the time of internet, they're coming, they study for years, they are 22, they know everybody, they do practicum all over the world, they're coming to Berlin, they want to go to New York, and you see the work and you see, oh, you painted only for years, you see it in the work, you have to come back in 10 years and then we can talk, but it's the information makes it totally turn around because the people know everything, but there's nothing there. It's only information.
No, that sense of, I think this is precisely the question that when certain economic or social conditions allow for this fast production of certain forms, whether it is calling yourself an artist or it is works, but in any, I think, practice, whether it is design, whether it is art, that any practice obviously needs its own sort of growing and breeding time, and precisely it's the question of materials and techniques and including the sense of how do you approach ideas. So when you say tradition, it's a bloody contested term. So what is going to be tradition? Craftsmanship is an extremely contested term, and especially here we are taking it lightly because it just simply means history, and it is not so. It involves great social pressures and it involves great inequalities in terms of labor and work. So these are very important questions that sometimes sort of operate at much larger sociological levels as much as they have to be understood through questions of technique and materiality of producing work in that sense. So on this note, we open it up for questions to the audience.
Home and interior has a very significant meaning in a social, political and individual context. Homes in Germany used to be very closed. It's a place, one locks the door. Often people don't know their neighbors and are segregated. We have gated communities also nowadays all over the world. Also in Bombay we have them. So the recluse into the private sphere and the iconic objects surrounding you, they have a very significant meaning. The couches and the fabrics used, so it's filled of semantics also to have a safe surrounding which is not accessible for the others from outside. And this you see also in a way in this exhibition. That has also to do with the objects displayed at homes. Now in India, the situation is a bit different because the border between private